All right, we're here with Sami Tabbaa. Sami, we want to ask you, how did you get started on this journey of law, basically? Take us from the very beginning.
The very beginning.
Yeah.
So there's a real answer, and then there's there's a real answer and there's a funny answer. I'll start with the funny answer, which is I tried to follow the aspirations of my parents who, as most Middle Eastern parents, aspire all their children to be doctors, right? So I tried to do that. I go for the pre-med path. And within 3 semesters, there was no way I was ever going to become a doctor in any situation. So
why is that?
I'm just not good at science, man. I find myself actually more interested in political science and literature. Took one legal course, and I started to feel like, I started to gravitate towards that. And, halfway through sophomore year, I just tell my mom, like, hey, this pre-med thing isn't going to happen. I'm going to do law. And she's like, okay, see what happens. But from there, I went through the path of trying to get my GPA up, because let's just say that science wrecked me in college.
What was your GPA?
My first semester of college GPA was a 2.4.
At Emory, by the way.
At Emory. I had a 2.4 GPA.
Which is like the equivalent of like a 3.9 at any other institution.
I got an F in calculus, and that was the end of it. But no, I switched gears to doing Middle Eastern and South Asian studies because I had already gone on the path of taking Arabic as a language within the university, which I already spoke, of course, but I wanted to get better from a grammatical standpoint. So I pursued that and then started studying religions, comparative religions, politics, history leading up to a lot of the, current situation within the Middle East. So I got to study a lot of that, which basically helped me to get my GPA up to where it was post-grad, which was at least above a 3.0. I wanted to take a year off after school in order to get a better LSAT score. And in that time, I actually worked at the Carter Center. So President Jimmy Carter has his own center where he focuses on democratic development, trying to do conflict resolution within all parts of the world. So I was actually focused on Palestine and Syria during the Syrian civil war, documenting incidences and actually trying to find a peaceful solution to that civil war. Mm-hmm. So I did that for a couple of months, and then I went to law school. And from there, I found myself halfway through getting into business consulting because I was focusing on healthcare law as a specialty that I was liking a lot. And then a lot of my friends getting into business consulting saying, hey, you could actually put the healthcare law piece within the consulting piece, combine it, and actually do some real good with it. So I ended up finishing law school and actually starting out as a business consultant at a company called Mercer, Marsh & McLennan Companies. And there we basically did what you know as like the Obamacare public platform for purchasing insurance.
Medicaid?
Not Medicaid. So
Marketplace,
okay, right? So the public marketplace that was instituted by the Obamacare law, we basically developed that same idea, but for corporations, right? So we would do the brokering of the deals between Fortune 500 companies and the insurance companies. We would broker the deals to find the best health, dental, vision plans for all these people, all of the employees of these companies. Within 6 months of working there was no internal fulfillment. Like I felt like I was serving corporations and not actually people, because all I'm doing is trying to save some big corporation millions of dollars for getting deals in order to, yes, provide human resources for their employees, but I didn't see the benefit of that right in front of me, right? I was just somebody's analyst making Excel worksheets and submitting things by 10 p.m. so that we could prepare for the meeting the next day. Like, it just wasn't fulfilling. I wasn't feeling the corporate life. So
You felt like a number,
I felt like I was serving numbers
serving numbers.
and not people, right? So I ended up getting back into law in 2018, where I got to work as a managing associate of a personal injury law firm. And that's where I first got, my big step into personal injury. Yeah.
So take me through, because, you come from a Middle Eastern background, right?
Sure.
I come from a Middle Eastern background. There's probably three noble occupations in our culture, right?
Sure.
That's a doctor,
Lawyer,
engineer.
There you go. Yeah.
How did your parents feel when you because you come from a family that has a medical background, right? From your dad to, I think, your older brother.
Yes.
And then your younger brother, right?
Yeah. So how
did they feel when you veered away from that path and try to, kind of make it a name for yourself in a different industry?
They were scared more than anything. I'm trying to find the word, but they were scared because they're uncertain. Because they think with medicine, which is very true, there's a very high demand for doctors in America. There's like 100,000 doctor shortage in this country right now as we speak. You want to get a job anywhere in America, New York, South Dakota, there's a job and it pays well. Mm-hmm. They're just thinking about my future as their son to ensure that he has a guaranteed future, guaranteed employment. They're looking at law as, okay, well, there's a lot of lawyers. Is the demand as high? There are some lawyers who get paid very well. Some lawyers don't get paid very well at all. Mm-hmm. So I think they were just scared about what me pursuing that path was going to look like. That was like their biggest thing. I think once I introduced the idea of personal injury to them and had them understand how, number one, the demand is very high for it, but number two, how beneficial it is and how impactful it is for people, I think they actually started to grow a little bit more respect for the choice that I did make to eventually practice law.
So basically they were probably, because you're the first person in the family, right, to veer away from the medical thing.
Yeah.
They didn't necessarily know, because it's a path that nobody in the family has ever taken before. Mm-hmm. They didn't want you to be like some type of, I guess, not a paralegal. What do they call that? What do they call the lawyers that are
like a public defender?
A public defender. They probably were just like, yo, I hope my son's not a public defender. Or because our parents attribute our happiness, right, to how much money we make. And I don't think our parents understand, being first generation Americans, I don't think they understand the idea and the notion of passion and fulfillment. They're just like, oh, a doctor make $250,000, you'd be happy. But you could be a doctor and make $250,000, and if that's not your passion, you're empty, and you're just empty empty inside, and you're not fulfilled. But you just have a whole bunch of money, and what good is all that money if you're unfulfilled?
I feel like I took a balanced approach with it because, yes, my parents are the same way. They're looking at everything from survival mode, right? And I appreciate that's how they looked at it, because they're thinking about us. They're thinking about their children whenever they're thinking in survival mode. So passion is not at the forefront. Mm-hmm. But for me, I feel like I had a good balance of both, because I looked at it from a certain perspective, this philosophy that I think really helped me justify my choice in going into law, right? Because I found something that, number one, I really, really like. Mm-hmm. And I found something that I'm pretty good at, mm-hmm. right? And thirdly, I found something with a large demand, right? I feel like medicine fulfills that, but I don't think every job fulfills that, right? So I think what I needed to do to my parents was to show them that those three components were there, right? So with me being able to start my own practice over the last 2 or 3 years, they've been able to see like, oh man, Sami actually got the ball rolling on this thing and it's working out, But for them, they don't see passion as a necessity mm-hmm. for the choices that you make in trying to provide for your family. It's irrelevant, right? Yeah. And I think in our generation, like you were saying, there has been it's become necessary for people to have a passion for something in order to fulfill it. I personally don't necessarily believe that to that degree, but I do believe you got to like it, right? Because if you ask me what I'm really passionate about, I've discussed it before. I like academia. Like I like what I studied in college, where I was studying Middle Eastern studies and politics and history. I would love to teach that, right? There are not enough Arab voices within the Middle Eastern studies spaces within academia. But at the same time, I'm looking at the difference between what a Middle Eastern studies professor might make versus an attorney. And unfortunately, I had to go with the thing that I like and not the thing that I love. And I think that's okay. I don't think there's anything wrong with it. But to force people to get into to occupations that they hate, that's where I think it's a huge mistake, right? I'm sure you know people who became doctors and they're like, I don't know why I'm doing this.
Yeah.
Like they're making good money.
Yeah.
And they're already thinking like, okay, how do I save enough money to do real estate or do something else?
To get out of here, to make an exit plan, to pay my student loans off and then exit.
You know what I mean?
It's counterproductive sometimes, but, we do feel the pressures from our parents. But I think, like you said, this generation, there's a shift, right? It's not just about money at this point and success. It's about passion and what fulfills you. And I know if, our parents are listening, they'd be like, that's bullshit. You know what I'm saying? But it's cool to see everybody take their own path and stuff like that. And it's cool to see your shift from, from the insurance from the business industry to insurance, and then moving on to personal injury and law.
Yeah.
And then me personally seeing you grow and take that leap of faith and start your own business. Entrepreneurship, that takes a lot of courage. It takes a lot of balls, if we're being honest with you.
Yeah.
And, by the grace of God, you were able to grow your business and continue to keep the ball rolling. So
yeah, man.
Kudos to you, man.
And I'm honestly very grateful for everything, like how things have been, building up for me in my practice. I was just thinking about this the other day, though. In terms of the misconceptions that usually come about with being an attorney or being, I guess you could say, a professional, where a lot of people will come up to you being like, oh, you're doing better for yourself now. Like now you gotta make the presentation for people, where like you gotta have a nicer whip, like you gotta get that nice car now, because like people won't take you seriously if you don't have that nice car. And don't get me wrong, like I already know what Beamer I want. Like I know what I'm getting myself for Christmas, right? But I've had my practice open now for 2.5, 3 years. Thankfully, I've been able to, graduate to afford things that I couldn't before. But I still drive my 4Runner from high school.
I love that 4Runner.
I have a 4Runner.
I saw it outside.
A 2006 Toyota 4Runner with 292,000 miles on it, and I still drive it. I still pull up on clients in this car. I go to networking events in this car. I don't care. Like, I mean, what I've realized with business, and again, I'm not saying it's the only thing you've got to do, but this idea of delayed gratification is so undervalued. People think that, oh no, it's okay to like splurge on yourself. And I'm not saying it's not. Like I got my wife a car last year, right? Like something we needed. But I feel like people tend to jump the gun, and the minute they see a little bit of money come in, they're thinking like, okay, well now I got to show people what I got. It's like, no, just reinvest it back into the business. That's how you're going to succeed. Every dollar you get out of your business, you're going to get it multifold versus you spending it on things to show people as if you have it. Maybe you do, maybe you don't, but really whatever you can make in your business, put it right back into it. Do that multiple times and you won't have to think about showing it to anybody because you know you got it, right? So,
and I think that's what gives you that edge in what you do in law, right? Because your authenticity resonates with people, and people call bullshit. We're human beings. You don't even need to know a person, but you could tell if somebody's putting on a front or not.
Sure.
I think that's what gives you an edge, is that you remain authentic to yourself. It's not a performative thing. It's something that, you do. It's genuine. I've seen you drive that 4Runner. You're going to probably drive it till the wheels fall off. I mean, it probably has another 200,000 miles on it. So
I might.
Yeah, man. I mean, I think that authenticity is what is the driving force that made, or you get all your referrals because you're authentic and you genuinely care. I know you're outside of being a lawyer. Who is Sami? For people who don't know, who is Sami Tabbaa outside of being a lawyer? What is he like? What does he like to do?
Yeah, so I like to chill. I like to meet people. I like to hang out with friends, of course, but I love when people bring that new friend along and they're like, oh, my cousin's in town. I want to, can they come chill with us? I'm like, yeah, of course, right? Like, I'd like to meet people. And some people say I know a lot of people in a lot of different cities, but it's because it's like, oh, my friend from Miami is here. It's like, oh, bring him along. Like I want to meet people. I want to know if I go to Miami, I got somebody I can hang out with there, yeah. Right? But in those interactions, man, what I'm trying to achieve is a connection with trying to understand somebody's perspective on their life, right? Trying to understand a perspective on what they think of certain things, whether it be social or political, religious. Like I like to really dissect these kind of thoughts within people just to open my own horizons of what other people see. Because we all live in our own world, especially in today's day and age where we're all just stuck on our phone and the algorithm is setting us up for our own world. Mm-hmm. But in reality, there's so many things going on in other places that having those conversations really allows me to get to know people and understand the world in a better way. So I'm not really about the whole nightlife going out. Like when I say going out, I like to go out, but I like to lounge. I like to chill. I don't like to party per se, if that makes sense, right? Mm-hmm. Like it's something I did in my youth, but now it's more grown-up things, just like networking, connecting with people, building relationships, man. Like that's what I love to do.
Absolutely. You're a family man now.
Yeah, man. I spent a lot of time with my daughters. My oldest is 2.5. My youngest is about to be 8 months. So wow. I love spending time with them. And, I'm just trying to be a nurturing father. You know what I mean? I feel like kind of going back to Middle Eastern parents, I think a lot of our fathers weren't as...
They weren't emotionally nurturing.
Yes.
They were... Their job, because what they were taught was, I provide for you, you should be happy.
They're providers.
Yeah.
Solely providers.
Financially.
Yes.
And that's what they were taught. I mean, this is not to talk bad about my dad or your dad or that generation. Sure. They didn't have the tools. So they said, as long as I'm out getting the money for the family, my wife will nurture them emotionally, whatever she's doing.
Yeah.
But we're in a position now, thank God, to where not only could you provide, because you have the tools, right? Not only could you provide for your daughters financially, but that emotional time spent with them is so important. And I think our fathers, well, like I said, they didn't have the tools, but they undermined that. I don't know, like when your parents breathe that life into you and that encouragement and they give you that emotional support, it just makes you more confident as a person growing up. Would you agree?
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. And again, my father was present, but
so was mine. I don't want to act like I had a deadbeat dad. I love my dad, and he was great.
This is not a
bashing,
a consoling session, right? Like, hold my hand, right? My father was an amazing provider. He was very present. But again, like you were saying, a lot of duties were placed on our mothers, mm-hmm. right? And it's actually really, really interesting to see the difference between our generation. And I don't mean as Arab Americans. I mean in totality. Mm-hmm. I'm seeing it across the world, actually, too. I thought it wouldn't necessarily penetrate other cultures, but everywhere, every father that I know that's within the millennial Gen X generation, they're all more actively involved in their children's upbringing and nurturing and raising than their fathers were. Mm-hmm. And I don't really have an explanation for it, but it's actually really, really, really nice to see, right? I think children need maybe not as much, right? I don't want to say like, oh, we're like, we men have the same level of emotional capability and intelligence as women do, right? I don't think that's true. But at the same time, to have that father figure in someone's life being more present, even for boys, doesn't matter if it's only for girls. I think it's going to result in healthier children growing up, maybe less mental health issues, right? I mean, who knows what's going to happen with it? But I think it's super interesting, and I love to see it.
Yeah, it breeds confidence and comfort and self-esteem. So yeah, it's a beautiful shift to see.
Why do you think that is, though? Like, are you seeing the same thing?
I see the same thing, and I think it's social media, and I think it's mental health has become a mainstream topic. Back in the day, if you were depressed or you're anxious, first off, those words weren't even used, especially in our cultures.
Yeah.
And if you were, they'd be like, well, somebody put the evil eye on you. Go ahead and pray it off.
Sure.
Or get you some money, man. You'll stop being sad.
Yeah.
Or, there's these remedies that it'll just like, oh, the reason why you're sad is because you're ungrateful. You know what I'm saying?
I've heard that one.
I don't know if I'm not sure if you grew up like me, but I never really, and this is, again, not to talk bad about my parents, but I didn't feel comfortable because a lot of value wasn't placed on emotions. Because our parents were in survival mode. It's you have a roof over your head, you have clothing, and we feed you on time.
Yeah.
3 meals a day. What the fuck are you sad about?
Yeah.
There's nothing to be sad about. And then they give you their stories of them growing up, and it just makes you feel worse that you feel this way.
Yeah.
So you're like, wow, I'm really an ungrateful piece of shit
Yeah.
for feeling like this. They're like, yo, we had to survive wars, and we had to survive poverty, and we had to survive political uprising. And you bitching about, it's all perspective. So
yeah. Well, it's funny. My parents did not necessarily, they didn't use their struggle to necessarily put us down. Unfortunately, like what you might have experienced.
So it's just my parents. Just kidding.
No, but here's the thing. What I appreciate about my parents, again, they weren't perfect, but their approach. So my parents never explained to us that we were well off. There was no indication of that in our life, right? If we're going to get some new shoes, and we haven't, we're still 6, 7, 8. We're going to Walmart. Hey, pick any shoe you want. Here's the aisle. Go pick it up, right? And I'm like, I'm at school and I'm envious that this guy's got the Nikes and I'm over here in the no-name brand shoes.
You're getting roasted.
Right? Yeah. I'm getting roasted for wearing no names.
Yeah.
Right? But a part of that lesson, I think, was by them doing that, I learned more about what the value of money looked like. I understood that like getting things wasn't easy.
Yeah.
Right. If something was expensive, there needs to be a reason to purchase that product. Right. Otherwise, why would we spend $100 on a shoe? I mean, today you can't find a decent shoe for less than like $80. But 90s, 2000s, if a shoe was $100, it was astronomically too expensive. My parents were like, no, right? Even till high school, I was paying, everything 50 and under, right? Like that was the way that they set it up. And so I think it just instilled, at the very least, an appreciation for what we had and a virtue of not demonstrating extravagance because it wasn't necessary. Right. And a lot of those values are still stuck with me today. Right. Like I still have my same Toyota. My dad drives a Toyota. Right. Like it's the same thing. He can definitely get something nicer than that. But that lesson is actually kind of ingrained in me to my own detriment. Because when somebody says, oh, go get this Beamer, I'm like, but why?
For what?
For what? For who?
For your validation?
You know what I mean? I got a car that got 4 wheels on it and it turns on every time I turn the key.
That's perfect.
You know what I mean? So
I grew up very similar. It's the value of the dollar, right? It's like now as adults, things that you could afford and stuff, you don't even buy them even if you could afford them. It's more of when you buy them, you're rewarding yourself essentially for your hard work. It's almost like, what are you celebrating? You know, like when you buy something for yourself, it should mean something. It's, you know what? I acknowledge that I put the work in and I worked hard for this. Let me go ahead and celebrate by purchasing this. It's a reward for your hard work. It's not just frivolous spending. You know what I'm saying? So, I grew up very, very similar in that regard.
And I think there's a balance, right? Like, don't get me wrong. I greatly appreciate this virtue of not being extravagant in spending that I received from my parents. But at the same time, I think that balance will soon come to be where, what's most important is to invest in my home, right? Priorities. I have a home that is suitable for my family. I have my business that is established and running itself. Now I can look into buying nicer things, right? But the problem is that people twist it and they're like, oh, I made a little bit of money, I'm going to go spend it on this thing that's not necessary, right? So I just hope, I wish the world was set up in such a way where it wasn't looked at as frugal, but actually like money conscious, right?
It's money conscious, and I think it comes from humility as well. You don't want to. We come from a culture where humility is valued, or at least a religion where humility is valued, right? And you don't want to sit there and flaunt everything you have, because there's people who don't have, and it's kind of a big like slap in the face to those people. So it's good to keep that in-house and to keep that private. You know what I'm saying?
Sure.
As private as you can. Yeah. Of course, for a business like yours, you want to be in the public eye as much as possible, because that your business relies on that.
Sure.
Switching subjects. I know that you worked for a firm before, right?
Yeah.
A law firm, and it was a PI law firm, right?
Yep.
And talk about whether anybody, or when you were in that law firm, did it feel like people doubted you, or did you ever have thoughts of opening up your own law firm like as you do now, and people were saying, well, it's too hard, or it's not a rational idea, or this business is too tough and you can't do it, and basically doubters, right?
Sure.
Did you have that experience when you were working for someone else, for a different law firm, of people doubting, your ability to open up your own personal law firm?
So at the last firm that I was at, I was given the authority to manage things, right? And I did a pretty damn good job at it. I had good employees. I got to make certain decisions to have the staff that I needed to do an amazing job, right? But with the way that the business was structured, he wasn't sending as much business as he could have been my way, right? And there was definitely some doubt that came about. I don't even know where the hell I'm going with this, bro.
Talk it out, man. I was gonna say, I'll be honest with you. My next question was, what do you want to say to those doubters now that you've seen what it took? Clearly, hard work and stuff like that. What do you want to say to people? Not necessarily specifically those doubters, people who may doubt. What do you want to say to people who want to start their own business or start their own thing, whether it be in the arts, whether it be in law, whether it be, what do you want to say to those people who might be doubting themselves and might hear a whole bunch of doubt from their environment as well? What would you say to those people?
What I'd say is that you have to blur out the noise, number one, because you're the only person that can determine whether or not you're ready to establish your own business or take the next big step to become independent. Because there should be a checklist on your mind of what needs to be done in order to effectuate this plan to become independent, right? So if you got to if you want to start your own business, you better have some money, right? You need to have some money saved up to be able to take care of yourself or your family or whoever while you're building up your business. Because in the beginning, you're not going to make that much money, right? It's going to take time for people to work with you and to start making referrals so that you can start growing your business, right? So you have to have some money saved up, right? But again, after you've fulfilled that checklist, if you're able to successfully do that and you have a list of items that you know you have to do in order to succeed in establishing a business, the voices of people telling you otherwise is irrelevant at that point, because they don't have the same drive that you do. Clearly, if they're telling you like, oh, you can't do it, there's no way that you'll be able to do it unless you know the same person that I've heard about or that I know. Well, is that the only way? There's only one way to do this, and it's the way that you've seen. There's got to be another way, right? And I for a period of time in the beginning, I was trying to make connections with people who I thought were the right people. I thought they were necessary because other people were like, oh, you got to know them in order to succeed. So go talk to them. I'm chasing. They're flaking. I'm not going to keep chasing somebody if they don't want to deal with me, right? And it all went back to the same basic thought of there isn't one way. Nice. Right? You cannot believe that there's only one way. Like, you can believe that the way that you've been told or a way that you've devised to succeed is a way to succeed, but never forget that that is not the only way. If you realize that what you devised was a way to succeed and it doesn't work out, find another way, right? That's what I learned, and that's what I would tell anybody who's trying to open their own business, is that once you've done your checklist of what you've got to do to be independent, you just got to like fuck the noise of everybody else telling you you can or can't do it, or it's going to take forever, or you don't have the money, or you don't know who you got to talk to do it. Hard work, man. That's all you need. Hard work. It doesn't matter what you know. Doesn't matter where you went to school, what your degree is. Does none of that. Like, as long as you have done your homework and you work harder than the next guy, you'll succeed. So
that's sound advice. Very sound advice. I think a lot of those people, and you could, chime in if you want, but I think a lot of those people that doubt, they're projecting their own fears onto you. So, do you agree with that?
So I think the people that do doubt sometimes do, meaning the people that doubt will also sometimes be the ones that are projecting their fears onto you. But then sometimes it's people who don't actually, they're the people that also don't want the best, they don't have your best interests in mind. Because right now, you're their employee.
Yeah.
They don't want to lose you. They see the spirit.
You're an asset.
They see the motivation. They're like, he can't leave me. I need him. So let me tell him he can't do it. So that maybe he'll end up actually taking my advice and sticking around.
So what you're saying is they want you to do good, right? But they don't want you to do better than them. And I think that's the theme with a lot of things, especially, I think a lot of people have a misconception of who Sami is. I mean, you portray yourself really well on camera and things like that, but I think a lot of people don't know the edge that Sami has when it comes to competition and competitiveness.
I don't think people know it because I don't physically show it, right? Because I don't believe it's necessary to physically demonstrate, right? You're talking edge, right? People try to show the edge, the competitive edge, through their personality. That's what a lot of these lawyers do on camera. And I'm not saying it's all an act. I've met some of these lawyers in person and they really are like that. And that's just a part of their personality. But I think people can sometimes be misled by that energy, right? Because they'll have that competitive edge and they think, oh, well, he's going to apply that for me on my case. So I shouldn't trust him with this, right? But you don't know what that attorney's work ethic looks like because it's not the same. Because by showing the physical competitive edge in public, that's not demonstrative of how that person performs on people's cases, right? So he might have that competitive edge when it comes down, when it comes time. But some people just want to know what the hell is going on in their case. And so many attorneys project that. They have this like competitive edge. They look really, aggressive on camera, and so people go to them, but then they don't talk to their client ever. And then they call me. Sure, I'm not as presently competitive and aggressive in my videos, but if you call my phone, I will pick up. You know what I'm saying? Like if you call my phone and I don't pick up, I'm calling you 5 minutes later. I communicate with my clients. I have a business that's set up in a way where I don't want volume. I want to have relationships with these clients. And as long as I have relationships with clients, I'm going to have continued business coming from people because I want them to say, Sami was there for me. Sure, it's nice to tell people that your lawyer got you a lot, right? But again, the competitive edge for me just doesn't show physically. It's going to show in terms of my commitment to your case. It's going to show my commitment towards our relationship more than anything, right? But of course, you look at my results, they're going to be just as good as the guy who's flexing like he's got the big muscles, right?
Yeah, because I think a lot of people, you could come off as Sami, the chill, laid back kind of guy next door. But when it's time to get on the case, I feel like you're ready to go to fucking war for your clients.
Yeah.
And that's the stuff that you don't see. So I think it's the opposite for you. You come off as laid back, but when it comes to the actual case and when nobody's watching, that's when you turn into a savage.
Yeah.
If that makes sense for your client in the best way possible.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Honestly, this conversation is actually very important because, like you said, a lot of people, they get stuck in the persona of somebody. And I don't want to put anybody out there in general, but I just want to speak generally speaking.
Yeah.
They speak with blah, 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 and all this rah, 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 and we've done this, and I'll get you that, and I'll go to war for you. But that's just a persona. It's the real work starts when the client isn't around and you're going back and forth with adjusters and you're going to bat for your clients and you're getting them the best treatment possible. And I think that's something that you do very well, being somebody who's experienced your legal services firsthand.
Yeah.
Yeah. You're a silent killer. You're the babyface killer. That's what I call you, you know, like looks could be deceiving and it's one of those things
but you know, it's funny. I was saying this earlier that it doesn't have to be like that, right? I was saying earlier about how sometimes it can actually be a pleasant experience working with insurance companies, right? And usually it's in the situations where it's obvious. Somebody got rear-ended, they got hurt, right? So it's clear liability in that case. But then whenever that case happens, and then you have an adjuster who's just like, tell me what you know, meaning like, what do you have? And I'm like, here's what we have. And maybe it's not enough for whatever reason, right? Something is missing or something isn't enough to allow us to get the full policy limits. Sometimes they're like, all right, well, this is what we're missing and this is what we need. So now there's two-way communication, right? I'm always looking to foster that relationship with the adjuster from the beginning. It's not like aggressive, like, look how hurt they are on day one. Well, okay, there's a car, but like, do you have any medical records? No, but this has impacted his life forever. Like, no, paint the picture slowly. Let them know where they're going to treat. Let them know that they got an MRI. Let them know that the MRI, you know, showed these impressions where they have to now get this pain management care because of this person's accident. You paint the slow picture for them, they won't have a choice but to fork up whatever you're trying to get. But you come in out the gates like ready to charge, like it's,
with the theatrics.
You're not going to get a positive result or at the very least, it's not necessary to get a positive result for your client. Because I guarantee you, as long as they're getting the care that they need and they're hearing from you, you can get them all the money in the world. But if you weren't picking up their phone calls, I guarantee you they won't refer you to anybody.
Absolutely.
That's what I've seen.
Absolutely.
Because I've worked at firms where, again, I've had a couple of lawyers that I worked with in the past that were actually very, very good. Like they were very good attorneys, but no relationship skills. They don't have repeat clients. They have to spend money to get new clients, right? So those people, again, I just look at the relationship building as an invaluable asset and principle of my firm that has allowed it to grow in the way that it has. Mm-hmm. So it's just not necessary. Like you said, the theatrics of it all is not necessary in order to actually perform to the highest level in this industry, like most people would try to say is necessary.
Mm-hmm. With all the firms out there, right, in Georgia, that spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on marketing. You see the big billboards, you see them on MARTA buses, you see the advertisements. To anybody out there, God forbid, right? Because car accidents are going to happen, and I pray that they're never serious or deadly.
Yeah.
But car accidents are going to happen.
Sure.
Statistically, why would somebody who gets in a car accident choose Tabbaa or Sami Tabbaa or the Tabbaa law firm over these other guys?
So the number one reason is that these big law firms are not going to provide the attention that is necessary in order to have you knowing what kind of process you're going to be going through in order to get this case resolved. Mm-hmm. You will have no idea. Ironically, they have the resources. Mm-hmm. They have hundreds of employees. They've got dozens of attorneys. They are well equipped to provide quality service. But I think with the majority of large law firms, the billboard attorneys, we'll call them, they are trying to do things as efficiently as possible. Mm-hmm. And so in the process of trying to make it efficient, which again, I wouldn't say there's anything that like inherently wrong with trying to be efficient in your business, but as a result, people get less care because 200 clients are assigned to one paralegal. For example, right? I'm not saying there's no paralegal that can handle it. I'm not saying it's impossible for a paralegal to handle that many, but is every one of those 200 going to get like tip-top care?
Are there cases being maximized?
That's another, yeah. Are there cases being maximized with one paralegal handling 200 cases? No way. I think it's impossible because it's not possible for one person to remember, okay, client number 132 has an appointment in 3 days, and the results of that will determine her next course of treatment. Times 200? Ain't no way. There is no way that they can provide tip-top service for that. So when you're looking at my firm, which again, I'm much smaller than your average billboard attorney, but I have resources at my firm, and the structure of my firm set up in such a way where clients are readily being contacted about what's happening in their case. Even if there's nothing for me to report, I'm asking about you. Mm-hmm. Because maybe you're going to introduce to me another injury that wasn't present the last time we talked, and now I can actually effectuate something within the case to ensure that that is demonstrated to the insurance company, right? Like the constant communication is actually less about customer service and more about identifying continuous issues that often arise in these types of cases. Mm-hmm. So that's the biggest difference, is that because we're able to communicate, and that will always be a principle within my firm, I'm able to better maximize cases because I'm constantly getting updates on what's happening in your life. Oh, I lost my job because for the last month I had to miss work like 6 times and I lost my job. Well, okay, but that's going to contribute to the lost wages now that wasn't there before, right? Oh, well, I got these headaches that developed after 3 weeks. Like, okay, well, we're going to make sure that you get to have a consultation with a neurologist now to do an assessment to see if there was maybe a traumatic brain injury that resulted from this, right? Mm-hmm. So these are just very small examples of why having a smaller firm like myself is actually better, in my opinion, than working with a large firm. Now, again, large firms have a lot of resources. How they choose to utilize them, I'm sure sometimes it does benefit people. But I think in the grand scheme of things, your average person who is inevitably going to need a personal injury attorney at some point in their life is better off dealing with a smaller firm with 1, 2, 3 attorneys at most who have all of their focus on that one person.
So what I'm getting from that is that Tabbaa law will provide more intimate, personable, a more intimate, personable, and comforting environment.
Yes, 100%. I mean, that is our mantra, is that we are reliable, we're dependable, and we are personable, right? Like, we are here for every one of our clients individually. And again, all my clients will say, we are, readily in touch with Sami. And I mean, to the extent, like, I have my office in Midtown where, I've had a couple of meetings, but honestly, most of my closings happen at Starbucks's, as close to the client's house as possible. Because I'm trying to make their life convenient. And it's like, let's just hang out for a little bit, right? I'll get them a coffee, we'll sign the paperwork, but then we'll just chill, right? Like, we're just having a good time reminiscing about like our relationship, but then of course, like, hoping to continue that relationship into the future, where they know that if they ever need me or my services, or if anybody in their friends or family need me, they got me, right? Mm-hmm. And so honestly, these coffee shop meetups are the most, I think, impactful in the relationships that I have with my clients, where I'm just meeting them. Like, where do you live? Oh, you're out in, Midtown. I'll see you there. I'll bring the disbursement. I'll bring the paperwork. We'll sign off, but then we'll just chill for a little bit. I do that with almost every single one of my clients.
That's awesome. It's like a familial bond almost. Coming from the culture you come from.
Yeah.
Hospitality is huge.
Yes.
So it's, hey, let me get you a coffee. Let me buy you lunch. Let me form a real bond with you. You're not just a transaction to me.
Yes.
You are now a part of my family, essentially.
Yes. In a way, man, I wish I could be even more hospitable. I should find a nicer spot. But again, it's like, you can find Starbucks anywhere, right? Yeah. I literally just look up their address, and then I look up Starbucks. And I'm like, hey, there's a Starbucks off of this road. Oh yeah, it's 5 minutes from my house. Oh, oh, perfect. Let's just meet there.
And
right?
They probably don't know that you drove 45 minutes to get there.
Brother, I've driven the distance for some clients. Yeah. So like, yeah, man, but I don't tell them. It doesn't matter, because I'm just like, I want to see you.
Absolutely.
Know? So yeah, man.